Welcome to FreshMaya.com. My name is Eric, and I'm going to briefly explain what three-point lighting is. Three-point lighting is a very popular technique used to light 3D renderings. It's used in film, it's used in interviews, a lot of photo shoots. So it's widely used, and basically what it is, it's lighting up your scene with three different lights. There's a main light source, which is called your key light. It's the brightest light in your scene. There is a fill light, which helps knock the shadows out a little bit. And there's a rim light, which kind of creates a halo effect around your objects or your subject, depending on what your project or scene is. On my screen right now, I have a rendering. And in this rendering, we have one light source. It's a key light, and it's located up here in the upper left. And you can tell that by looking at the light hotspots and the shadows. Now, majority of beginners in 3D use this typical light setup for rendering their projects. Some issues here, and even though there's certain scenarios where you would want to use a one-point light, the majority of your renderings are probably going to benefit by using a three-point light system more so than using a one-point light. If you look closely at this sphere in the center, the bottom right-hand corner, we can't really see the edge of our sphere. It disappears into the shadows. Our shadows are really harsh. Also, same thing with this torus, the bottom left-hand corner and the bottom right-hand corner. We can't really see the edges of our object. It just completely is engulfed by the shadows. Also, the upper right of our sphere disappears into the blackness of our background, as well as our table surface. You can see a little bit of the edge of our table over here on the left, and you can see a little bit over here on the right. But the rest of the table, it just completely disappears into the background. So it kind of takes away from the 3D effect a little bit. I'm going to add a second light for the called the fill light. Now, our shadows aren't nearly as harsh. The bottom right of our sphere, we can see the edge a lot better now. It doesn't disappear into the shadows. Also on our torus, the bottom left and right edges are easily seen. And the upper right of our sphere now doesn't disappear in our background. We can actually see the edge there as well. And also our table. We can see the whole edge of our table now. So it looks much better. I'm going to add one more light, the rim light, and you will see kind of a halo effect appear around our sphere, and also the left and right top edges of our torus will be a little more visible, stand out. So there's our third light. So there's the fill light and our rim light. So let's look at the basic setup for a three-point lighting system. Here's our scene. I've got a few items here in the middle. We've got our ground plane. There's our camera. Now, let me go to a more top view. Our camera is pointing at our object, and then we have our main light source about 45 degrees, maybe even a little less, about 45 degrees from our camera. And that's typical. It's the brightest light in our scene. I've got it kind of up high. Now, because our key light is up here at the upper left, all our shadows are cast to the bottom right of here. So I put my fill light, which is actually an ambient light that I created. I put that over on the opposite side to help soften those shadows up. Now, in the real world, if there was like an interview or something like that, or a photo shoot, your key light is going to bounce around some. But in computer graphics, since we don't have any light bouncing, or at least not in this particular scene, I don't have any light bouncing around, it's even more critical to have this fill light because it also mimics the light bouncing around on our objects. Now, our fill light's not nearly as bright as the key light. It's just bright enough to bring out those edges and soften the shadows up. In the back, I have a directional light, and it's acting as our rim light. I've got it low enough to where it's just kind of casting light on the edges of our objects to kind of bring out like a little halo effect, as you saw. Now, one thing different about this scene is, let me go to shaded mode. I'm going to press the number 7 on my keyboard so you can see what the light's doing. This key light, I've got it really low to the surface, so it's casting a really bright hotspot there. Because of that, I don't want to add any more light to this surface. So what I did was, on this rim light, I selected the rim light and then selected the surface, and then in my rendering menu set I went up to lighting and shading, went down and clicked on break light lengths. That way my rim light doesn't cast any light on my surface, on the ground plane. It only casts light on my objects. If I had not done that, then this surface here would have been just way too bright and washed out. Now the other thing I could do is, if I wanted, I could take this key light and I could raise it up to get rid of that hotspot. And then now I could relink my light and my ground plane by going up to lighting and shading and clicking on make light links. And then that would allow this rim light to cast light on this ground plane. But since I have this key light so low it's casting this hot spot, I just really didn't want any extra light on this ground plane. So that's the only difference in this scene that majority of scenes will probably have. So that is the basics of 3-point lighting. Let me pull up the rendering view again so you can see one last time. There is our scene lit up with just one key light. There is a fill light added. Now our key light is a spotlight, and when I added the fill light I didn't make any changes to the spotlight. All I did was added a fill light and just bumped up the intensity just enough to where it brings out these edges more and lights up, just kind of brightens up these shadows some. And then our rim light, which is disconnected from our ground plane, is casting light on the edges of our objects. I hope that helps explain a few things about 3-point lighting. Thanks for watching.